how can people begin to attract the life that they want?
Wow, that's a big question, Doug. But I'm going to start with one of the parts of what I believe makes that happen, and that's gratitude. So to bring abundance into your life, you have to be cultivating an abundant mindset. And so a really easy way to start is to list the things that you're grateful for that you already have. And as part of attracting things into your life or manifestation, there are various techniques like visualization or vision boards. But part of it is, imagine it being true. Imagine what it would look like, feel like, smell like. And then when you have that vision in your mind, give gratitude for it becoming true. So then, it sets you on a path of, I'm grateful for the things that I've got. These are the things that I want. Um, and you're staying positive and abundant and grateful, and that's much more likely to attract those good things into your life.
So from a scientific perspective, I know you're a neuroscientist and that's what your background um, is in. What is it about gratitude and focusing on the things that you have accomplished and how far you have come? Like, how does that impact the brain in a way where it gets you into this abundant mindset?
Yeah, so if you think of it as a series of seesaws, then abundance and lack are at the opposite ends of that spectrum, and that also correlates with certain emotions and neurotransmitters and hormones in the brain. So when you're in lack mindset, it's kind of like survival mode in the brain. You're stressed. You might be feeling things like fear, anger, shame, sadness, and that correlates with the stress hormone cortisol. And when you've got cortisol flowing around the blood in your brain and body, it actually, if it's at a high level all the time, the brain kind of will rearrange the blood flow so that you're not wasting your resources on things that aren't crucial to your survival. But that means that your brain isn't working at its best. At the other end of the spectrum, if you cultivate gratitude, then you're more likely to be operating, in trust and with excitement for life. And that correlates with the hormone oxytocin, and that kind of helps to make you feel more warm, to lower your guard, to take some healthy risks. And, I'm sure you can tell just from those two states, which are correlated with hormones, you're much more likely to, notice good things, or people are more likely to help you if you're in that state of abundance and warmth and, you've got the good hormones pumping around your brain and your body.
Diving more into um, gratitude, much like the law of attraction, much like manifestation, gratitude has become a buzzword over the last several years, and people have emphasized the importance of it. And you just talked about why it's so important from a scientific perspective. But um, is there a specific type of of gratitude practice that you recommend to help people get into that brain state that you were just talking about? Meaning, is it writing something down they're grateful for? Is it writing something down followed by an action for that thing? Like, what is your recommendation for people going through that process?
So my recommendation is the simplest thing is that, each day or most days you could just write down 3, 5, 10 things that you're grateful for, because it sort of just brings it to the front of your mind, and then it's easier to not forget to do it. The other thing is that the language that you use in life. So I actually went on a bit of a neuroplasticity journey, which, neuroplasticity is overwriting, um, you know, thoughts or behaviors that you don't desire with ones that you do. And I was in this habit when good things happened to me of saying, I can't believe that's happened, but, in a really positive way. But I actually began to change that to, I'm so grateful that that's happened, so that it was more part of my narrative to remember to be grateful for those things and not just express my kind of amazement at them happening. So those are the two things that I do. Even when speaking with others, you can say thank you and I'm grateful more. So it's just, kind of really, it's just a practice like anything else that you might be learning.
Do you think that it's important for like people's actions to reflect what they're grateful for? Like, if somebody writes down, "I'm grateful for my health" every day for 2 weeks, and they don't exercise, I mean, don't I think that would create some level of distrust in your mind? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say that just writing down the things you're grateful for does have some positive effect on its own. But yes, of course, like with anything in manifestation, if the actions align with the thoughts, then It's just more powerful. And specifically if you're talking about things like health, then don't take it for granted. Yeah, do the things and eat the right food, do the exercise, take the supplements, whatever. And then you can even add that to your list. You can say, I'm grateful that I'm doing these things to keep my health good. Because then it becomes more about what you're doing than just what you have.
That makes sense. And before we go further, and I want to definitely like continue the process of how to attract what you want in life, and how to manifest things. But I think it's important for us to define what manifestation is in your words. 'Cause I think that there's a lot of meanings out there. I think some, in my opinion, can be misleading, while others I strongly agree with. Like, what is your definition of manifestation?
So my definition comes from the cognitive sciences, which is neuroscience and psychology. And it's basically about making sure that your thoughts, which are underpinned by your beliefs and your actions, are in line with getting the things that you want in life. So, first of all, you have to be clear on what you want to bring into your life. And then you have to keep that abundant mindset, but also start to think about the things that you say, the way that you behave, the thoughts that you have. Are those aligning with bringing that into your life? And then the action part is that you also actually have to go out and notice the opportunities and grasp them and do the things that you can to bring these things into your life. And when you set a goal and you take certain actions towards, creating that into reality, when you know that you have done the things that have drawn that into your life, it's much more empowering. And then it's almost like a muscle, it builds your trust in your ability to manifest through action, not just creating a fantasy ideal life and then sitting at home and waiting for it to come true.
And where do you think a lot of these misconceptions about manifestation have come from, given that, you just touched on what the science of manifestation is, and how it's vastly different from a lot of these modern things you might read about regarding it.
I think that since we've been able to scan brains, we understand much more about what happens when we think certain thoughts or experience certain emotions. And our brain it's like the CEO of the body. So the actions that you take actually come from your thought processes. Prior to the science being able, being knowing more about how the brain works when it's functioning normally or at its best, rather than when there's a disease or an accident, manifestation was largely explained by quantum science and often by people who weren't scientists themselves. And very frequently I hear people saying that they don't really understand what it is or how it works. So there's two things there. One is that if you don't understand how something works, or certainly for me, then it's harder to make it work for you. And also, if it's something external, like particles or vibrations, and you don't know how to influence that, then it can be quite disempowering. Whereas if it's your own thoughts and the things that you go out and do in the world, you actually feel more like you're in the driving seat of your life. And, that's obviously, it means you have to take responsibility. But then when you see good things happening, you know that you created them. And so it kind of has this cumulative effect.
Going back to the beginning of our conversation, where I talked about like how can we attract more abundance, how can we attract the life that we want. We talked about obviously the definition of manifestation and what that actually means. And we talked about like this big first step in gratitude. Like, where does somebody go from there? Let's just say they have their gratitude practice in place, or they're going to start tomorrow. Where do they go from there to be able to identify what they want in their life, and then be able to attract it?
Okay, so yeah, so let's say you've got your gratitude practice, maybe you're writing into a journal and you may be writing other things into the journal as well. And so you start to get to know your thought patterns better. And some people have quite a good idea of what they want, but I do often have people saying, my issue is that I don't really know what I want. And so to those people, I say, think about the feeling that you'd like to have in your life. So writing it down, a lot of people make a list of the things that they want, but I'm more in favor of creating a vision board, but I call them action boards for all the reasons that we've just discussed, which is that you have to then do things to bring those things into your life. Because the effect of visual imagery is very strong on the brain, particularly the subconscious part of the brain. When we're writing, it tends to be more the logical part of the brain or systems of the brain. So I recommend that people look through magazines, or you can do it digitally as well, and find images of things that you're drawn to or that that you want. The good thing about doing the images like that is that you might spot something that you didn't know that you wanted, but you might be drawn to a certain image. So it doesn't limit you through what you're capable of thinking. And then create the board, place it somewhere that you can see it, at least once or twice a day. So by your bed is an obvious one. And particularly if it's the thing that you look at last thing at night, then it has more of an impression on the subconscious part of the brain. So to look at it daily, to visualize the feeling of that all being true, that being in your life, and then also, giving gratitude for that. So it's a constant process. You're looking at it, you're imagining it, you're giving gratitude for it. And then of course the, most important part is that you go out into the world and make it happen. But the visualization is priming that in your brain because, we're so busy, we're so distracted, we have a list of tasks that we have to do during the day. So these dreams and desires can kind of go to the bottom of the list if we're not keeping them at the top of our mind. So that whole process just means that you don't forget that that's what you're looking for. And therefore, you're more likely to notice things in real life that could lead you to the objects that you've put on your action board.
How specific and how big should these goals and thoughts be on the action board? Because I think, in my experience, when people are looking to bring something into their life, it's normally like this big goal. It's like, I want to completely transform my body. I want this fabulous relationship. I want all this money. I want this house, all these things. And I think sometimes that can set people up for failure because they're not doing the things in between that are necessary. Like, what are your thoughts on specifics when it comes to this action board?
Yeah, I mean, the more specific, the better, just because if you think about it as the process of priming your brain, then the more detail that you give to your brain, the more likely it is to notice even the smallest or tangential thing that could, help to lead you there. I really love the fact that you've asked about how big should these goals be, because, it's kind of easy in manifestation to say, dream big, why not? But I think we have to be careful with that. I personally started sort of not small, but let's say realistic goals, because what you don't want to do is set such big ideals that at the end of the year you feel like, oh, I didn't achieve any of those, because then the whole process becomes demotivating. So you could have a range of things, some things that would be considered more like quick wins, and then maybe some bigger things that might take longer. So let's say, a relationship is something that has so many variables involved in it that you can't necessarily control all of them. So that could be like a bigger, longer term goal that's happening throughout the year, let's say. And then in the meantime, if you had some work goals or some fitness goals and you managed to, to make them come true, then you start to think, okay, this is working. There's a few things that have already happened and some things just take longer. So in answer to that two-part question, I would say specifics are important, although later on, because I've been doing these boards for about 15 years now, later I kind of could make things more metaphorical because I knew what it meant to me. And to me, that then opens up opportunities that I might not have thought of. So if you're very specific, this amount of money, this job, this relationship, then that's great. But once you feel like you're really good at manifesting, you can also do what I call leave a little space for magic. So, allow maybe things that you haven't even thought of yet to come in. So it's a process. And I would say start off specific and realistic. And then later it can, the goals can become bigger and bigger if you feel like you've done it successfully for a few years. And then it can also become less literal. So it's more just like, this is how I'd like my life to feel or be. And, it could be, for example, it could be things like saying, I specifically want to travel to a certain country this year. And then later it could become, I just really want to like travel a lot and see the world and experience different cultures.